This is a Viva PR podcast.
I do get other local authorities ringing me, probably weekly, about this. But we want to say, look, you don't necessarily have to go to your Manchesters and your Leeds to have a really cool career. People say, why is Burnley on my TV like twice in 2 days? I saw an opportunity because Brassic were filming, Sky were doing the Mission to Burnley documentary, the football club.
Hello and welcome to PR in the Real World, a public relations podcast from Lancashire's leading agency Viva. I'm your host, Tony Garner, and I've run a successful PR agency out of Ronstal in Lancashire for over 20 years now, and we've had plenty of wins and some losses along the way. And it's that journey that I want to reflect on this podcast. We're Lancashire's sole representative on the prolific North Top 50 agencies in 2024. And we wanted to use this podcast to really share some insights into the real world and introduce you to some of the PR experts we've met along the way, and very much with a Lancashire, not London slant. Our work is all about effective communication, and our guest today knows all about that. I'm delighted to say I'm joined today by the brilliantly talented and uber hardworking Rachel Bayley, who is one of the team behind the Place brand for Burnley. She's responsible for promoting the borough of Burnley as a great place to work, invest, study, live in and make cool TV dramas in. And she's done such a cracking job of putting Burnley on the map. She's a regular on national panels talking about how they've achieved it. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I'm going to let listeners into a little bit of a secret here. Rachel and I go way back. She was actually one of the very first people that I took on work experience. God knows how long ago that was now.
A long time, probably 20 years.
We go back quite a while, and our careers then departed and then crossed over again a few years ago. But do you want to tell people about your career journey today?
You're right, I did indeed do work experience, and you left probably my favourite ever LinkedIn recommendation, which was really succinct but flattering, so thank you. Yes, so I graduated from the University of Sheffield in journalism. I then moved into a media agency in Manchester where I was tasked with writing 30 news stories a day. So that was a bit of a baptism of fire into the world of work. But I really do think it shaped my work ethic, my enthusiasm, and also it really taught me to get to the nub of the story really quickly and just get it out there. I spent several years there in Manchester, then I crossed over into the dark side of PR, as some may call it, as you know, as a former journalist yourself. And I spent 8 years in the financial services sector. There I looked after UK marketing for a financial company. I will say, I'll let you into a secret, is that I definitely, when I went for this interview, which happened to be on Christmas Eve actually, I didn't have most of the experience that they were asking for because I'd just come from solid news. They wanted events and social media and PR and everything. But obviously I must have had a really good interview because they offered it me the same day. And I really cut my teeth there, learning everything that you need to know about all aspects of marketing. And then there was a big restructure. They were bought out by a global company. I ended up picking up internal comms as well as part of my remit. But my team ended up being in the States, and I'm quite a sociable person and I was feeling a bit lonely. So that's when I ended up looking for different roles. Also, a big global company, there's not much room for creativity. Everything went through a very long sign-off process, legal, risk, etc. And I'm just a very creative person. So I felt like it was definitely time to move on. Wanted to be surrounded by a team, and then I took on the Burnley Place brand role, ironically in April 2020 during a pandemic, so I didn't quite get the team aspect that I wanted. So yeah, that's kind of my career in a nutshell.
Really interesting. Lots of different experiences for you to pull on. But let's go back to that April 2020 and what you found there, and in terms of like how you kind of approach that job of telling the story, changing the narrative of Burnley, and what you found that the narrative to be there and your approach to it.
So what I actually did, if I just take you back to my interview, is I sent every contact in my WhatsApp just a simple question, describe Burnley in one sentence. And it was a mixed bag. The majority of it was going on about former mill town, blah, 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 which is so frustrating when people talk about that. But then there was a lot of positives, things like on the cusp of something big, could be brilliant, and I feel like it's getting there. And I really clung on to those aspects. And I tended to obviously agree with that side of things. Having lived locally, may have gone out in Burnley several times a week growing up. So I could tell that it definitely had something special about it. So I found a brand. The Place brand's actually been going 15 years. So I've been in post now 4.5 years. I was really impressed with what I saw, but that feedback, and I know feedback that happened amongst younger people in the area, what they thought of Burnley, it still wasn't quite where it perhaps needed to be. So I think why I was brought in was to bring in fresh ideas, fresh perspective, which I do think you regularly need to do when you're managing a brand.
What was your approach then? What were the fresh ideas? What did you lean into?
So obviously I was at home. I met my team on my first day on Teams, which obviously is never ideal. I had a baby at home, a toddler at home. I had no kitchen that was being renovated, etc., etc. My husband was out at work, so my baby would crawl across the desk, shut the laptop. It was a bit of a nightmare, I'm not going to lie. So some of my first jobs were probably jobs that you don't get normally time to do in a job. So I was tasked by redoing the website. I mean, what a chore is it to do a website? But I had time to, amongst all that happening at home, to actually think, right, I'm not in a busy office, I'm not out and about. And that was one of the first things I delivered was the website. And what I really focused on was the video content. There wasn't any video content. And as you'll know, being in PR, you've got to see something to believe it sometimes. So I came at it with, well, it's all right. You can get in a bubble, can't you? And I thought, well, it's all right if you could be doing all this amazing work, but if people outside aren't believing it, what's the point? So I thought, right, we'll get out, we'll film some videos. And actually the website now, every page of the website has a different video on it to kind of sum up that page. But I mean, that was 4.5 years ago. So we're going through the process at the minute of redoing the videos because a lot has happened in Burnley in that time. Also on the See It to Believe front, I got one of the first big wins was Granada reports came into Burnley Town Centre when we were allowed to reopen the non-essentials later on that summer. I got into Burnley Centre and it just looked really nice. It had all the correct signage out, everything looked smart, the flower pots were lovely, it was all nice and clean. I just thought with the journalist hat on, this would make really good TV. So I created a big schedule for ITV and said you can interview all these people who will say all these great things and will be great on camera. And it went down really well and they ended up coming back for the second day running because we were so helpful. And looking at social, it's quite funny. People say, why is Burnley on my TV like twice in 2 days? So I would say I came in with a more, with the hat on of someone who had come external from the brand and had not been in that bubble. It's like, well, unfortunately, people still have some of these perceptions. So let's now put it in people's faces and say, look, this is real. This is all this good stuff's happening in Burnley. And
really challenge them. I guess, I mean, COVID was a terrible time and we don't like to be reminded of it. But you joining there, it kind of presented an opportunity to, especially on that news front. Remember, you and I having a couple of conversations around that time with media looking for positive stories amid the gloom. And you were well placed at that point to kind of stick your hand up and present the borough in a different light.
100%. Burnley was also the first. There was a government instruction at the time to create these community hubs to help those in society who really needed help. And Burnley was the first in the country to pull together what is now Burnley Together, which was amazing. I just think it really embodies the community spirit that Burnley has that people might not see because they might see things that happened in the past, but that's not the Burnley that we know. I'll also give it to Burnley Council is that whilst the wider economy and growth team were pulled on COVID grants for businesses, they understood the importance of marketing your way through these things. Quite often marketing is cut during troubling times, but the Place brand team weren't pulled onto any other jobs. We're kind of like a ring-fenced resource. We just kept branding our way through the pandemic. All the good news stories where, for example, maybe Batch Distillery were making hand sanitizer or Crow would have set up a soup kitchen, things like that. Our manufacturers were making PPE instead of aeroplane parts. We were pumping out all these good stories where we were showing how innovative we actually were.
And I guess at the same time that allowed you to build relationships and knowledge about the patch that you'd inherited.
Yeah, so whilst I obviously couldn't go out and meet people, I just got so busy on Teams, Zoom, setting up video calls, to the point now where sometimes I'll come across someone who I'm adamant I have met in person and I haven't. It was just all the video calls. And then we'll realise, like, oh, this is the first time we've physically met. Not so much now, because obviously we're quite a long further down the path, but it happened when we were allowed back out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we even moved our events online. So we had Sean Dyche, who obviously was manager of Burnley FC at the Times, and Alan Pace, who was the then new owner, obviously still the owner. We did an online event with them. So we just kept going, I think, just kept going.
Burnley's business community has always been quite strong. There's been a group there that the council and the place brand helped establish called the Bondholders, which has really helped bring the business community together in a way that other places have really struggled to do. What do you think that the secret sauce is there?
I do get other local authorities ringing me probably weekly about this. Secret sauce, one, I think, is just the Burnley passion. Like, you've either got it in your place or you don't. Obviously, Burnley is a very passionate place stemming from football. But in general, I just think the people say what they mean and mean what they say, which is brilliant. Another key thing, perhaps a controversial topic, is we charge our bondholders because we firmly believe that how can you value something if you're not kind of paying for it? You can be a bit flaky with it. So our bondholders pay, albeit as an incredibly reasonable amount, but they still pay. And it all adds up to a healthy budget that allows us to do what we do. And they see that, because with that budget, we can do all this amazing stuff in Burnley. And who doesn't want to have their business in a thriving place? So I would say secret sauce is definitely the passion of the Burnley people. Having the place brand separate from the council brand. I say this at every event I go to. And when I see people like myself who they tell me they might do 3 days in business support and then 1 day on place brand, on a day on something else random, how are you ever going to have an effective brand if you're not fully focused on it? So I do think that is also absolutely essential, and your brand needs to be separate from the council brand, which is really important.
Why is that important in your view?
Because let's face it, a lot of people have opinions about councils. I obviously, seeing what Burnley Council does, I think Burnley Council is a brilliant brand. I think they're really innovative. You know, they're small but mighty. Like, they saw the bigger picture 15 years ago that this would pay off, and it has. But obviously, if I'm a business owner and I'm having a bit of a argument perhaps about business rates, or a resident's not happy about something, you're going to be like, oh, the council. Like, people just blame councils for most things in life, when even the potholes, which is not Burnley Council, by the way. We even see it where Burnley Council and Burnley.co.uk, the place brand, can put out the same news story and the council comments on social will be critical and ours will be really positive, which I just think is all the evidence. It's important to have that separation. But also the place brand is the bridge. So obviously my bondholders will come and say, I don't suppose you can link me up to someone in planning. I've got this planning issue I could do with some advice on. Likewise, the business support team at the council come to me and be like, we've unearthed this amazing hidden gem of a business and we think they should be bondholders. Let's go and visit them together. So it works really well being that bridge. Yeah.
So there's that connection, but that separation, which is ideal. I said in the intro, I emphasised that you're leading a great little team that has got colleagues in other councils and other place marketers, interested in what you're doing. Do you have a great budget behind you? I guess that's one of the questions that you get asked when you're on those national stages. What is the budget side of things, and how do you stretch that?
We're very open about budget, obviously. So the bondholder pot, obviously this is relying on the bondholders paying their invoices. If they were to all pay at exactly the same time as one another, it would generate around £100,000 in income, which sounds great and is great, but keeping in mind 2 of the 3 salaries in the brand team come from that pot. So when you're taking 2 salaries out of that, it's not quite so high, but very much appreciated. It's amazing that our bondholders see what we're doing and want to pay for that. The council obviously then put in a really healthy amount, which taking in other salary and on costs, pensions, money for other marketing activities, that's roughly around the 200,000 mark. So it's healthy, but again, obviously you've got to factor in all admin costs and things like that. We have to stretch it because we do 20 events, if not more, a year. We have the Burnley Lifestyle magazine that goes out twice a year, In Business Burnley magazine that goes out twice a year. Kind of off the side of my desk, we now have this Film in Burnley office that we do. Just everything that we do, including salaries, has to come from this budget. So it's definitely healthier than other place brands because our bondholders pay, and that is key. Also, obviously, the council can't touch the bondholder money, which is also key. So if anything is left in the pot, obviously that just gets rolled over. And I think that's why it's important that if you're a place brand, your ambassadors are paying, because we all know that councils, unfortunately, do have budget cuts made. I mean, Burnley Council haven't, thankfully, massively cut our budget or anything from their end. But say that was to happen and they had instructions from above to cut budgets, at least we know we've got a safety net of the bondholder money.
What is it that you think that being able to use that money in a clever way has made you stand out? When you're talking on a national stage, what are the things that other people go, oh, that's interesting?
I would say when we established the Film in Burnley office, I keep using the word office, it's quite funny really, side of the desk, people were amazed that we didn't go through some sort of feasibility study, which I have, again, other councils ringing me, what feasibility study did you go through? And I was like, I didn't. I saw an opportunity because Brassic were filming, Sky were doing the Mission to Burnley documentary, the football club. We had Bank of Day filming with Netflix. I was getting all these requests to find locations and who owns this. And I just thought, right, I need to package this up a bit nicely. Charge a very minimal amount. It starts at about £25 for a filming permit. It, again, literally goes into a pot that we don't touch. And then obviously say they're using council car parks, we just charge per space as we normally would. So we're not greedy with it. But all that money gets reinvested back into the community, which is great. So that surprises people that we don't have to go through all these hoops. Like the council are just like, look, we trust the place brand team to set the strategy and to run with it, obviously as long as it aligns with morals, ethics and everything.
You laughingly call it the office, but it's actually just a little box at the side of your desk. And you've decided to kind of set this little side project, we'll call it, for want of a better word. What do you think the benefits are for the borough?
Firstly, as mentioned, everything gets reinvested. So we recently had Organics, which is quite a large children's food brand, filming in Thompson Park. They were going to film in London, but saw how helpful we were in that I could act as that centralised point, so they didn't have to go through the houses. I can only imagine London's a bit of a nightmare to film in, whereas I was like, oh no, I can speak to the Council Green Spaces team about the park, and I can speak to so-and-so about catering for you. Also, I think controlling that narrative a bit more, because we were sick and tired of seeing the same backstreets on camera, which just reinforces this whole old mill town perception. And we're proud that we've got that heritage and we've got these rows of terrace streets. It's in our northern spirit. Lots of northern towns have the same. It just felt like we kept getting singled out and like, this is Burnley with this, gambling shop and some back streets, which again, every town has, but we felt like we were getting singled out a bit for it. So we wanted to show people like, look, we've got the singing ringing tree. Like, where else really have you got like places like Gawthorpe and Townley in one location? These heritage halls, beautiful countryside, innovative manufacturing hubs you can film in. The college, the University of Central Lancashire, their spaces are incredible. Why we did it was, again, when we were getting filming requests, was, oh, do you have any like terrace streets we could film in? It's like, well, we do, or you could film here. So for us, it was more about actually showcasing how beautiful Burnley is on camera.
So again, changing that narrative from that traditional cobble streets and mill chimneys and cloth caps and whippets to, actually, you need to think again.
And we're very proud. Like I said, I said in my interview, actually, like, I'm never going to make up something as the brand. I'm going to work with the assets I have, but we do have all these assets. Like, we do have the heritage and we also have the innovative, futuristic things as well. So yeah, that was kind of for me. And then any income that comes from it, like I said, it's fully reinvested and it's kind of an added bonus.
How is the Burnley kind of brand and the work that you do received by residents in the borough?
Yeah, I can only speak for the last 4.5 years. I mean, a lot of residents, I would say, still do get the brand a little bit mixed up. So on our social media pages, it's very clear with burnley.co.uk, but you can tell people still sometimes think with the council, they think with the Burnley Express. But I mean, we have a tough job in that every person in Burnley and with an interest in Burnley is kind of our audience. So as you'll know from a brand perspective, that's hard. One of the first questions when you do a brand strategy is, who is your customer avatar? And for us, it's like, well, kind of everyone. Yeah. I'd like to think that a lot of the residents do recognise that we are a separate brand from anyone else. They might not quite know what we do, but we take that as a bit of a positive in that they see all this good stuff happening, all these amazing videos and all these positive stories, and they might not know actually who Burnley.co.uk are, but they're seeing the good output, which to me is, we're not in it because we're like, oh, look at us with a Burnley brand team. We'd rather them see the positive output and the positive stories. So yeah, my answer to that is, obviously we'd love everyone to know about the brand, but do most consumers really know about all the various different brands going on? I'm not too worried about that bit.
You've talked about the value of video and the way that that's helped shape the narrative. The two magazines that have been going for a long while now, people still like print then?
They do. So Burnley Lifestyle magazine was once a year, and we took that to twice a year. So Katie joined our team 2 years ago. She became the editor of the magazines. She's taken much more a commercial approach with the magazines in terms of advertising. We still believe it's a very beautiful magazine and the ads are very tastefully put in. Some magazines you pick up are just ad. You can't pay for advertorial. Us and the team write it all. So it's a very authentic magazine. But yes, why we took it to 2 is we kept getting requests like, oh, we don't want to wait a year for another one. We have a lot of expats as well. We were getting requests from all around the world, especially Australia. When's the next magazine coming out? Can you post me a copy? So yeah, people definitely love to do print. In fact, we've just got the latest magazine, Lifestyle magazine, came out last week. And we have a young gentleman from Burnley called Ollie, who also is a drag artist, and he's called Diana Dogood. And we put Diana on the front cover, and he had his own launch party with copies of the magazine and printouts of the magazine in the town centre, because he just thinks it's so progressive that what is a Burnley Council associated publication has put a drag artist on the front cover. And we're just like, but why? We are such a... This is what I mean. We welcome everyone in Burnley. Yeah. And I know I'm paid to be brand manager, but I've not come across issues in terms of community cohesion. Personally, we have a great diverse borough. I think you only have to look at the council at the minute. Its current makeup, it does reflect the diversity of our borough, and I think that's great.
Yeah, brilliant. How important is social media in controlling and building and telling the story of the brand and the borough?
It's incredibly important for us because, like I said, everyone with an interest in Burnley is our audience, and how else are you supposed to reach all these people if not for social? Like, it must have been such a tougher job when the Place brand started. Social was obviously around, but it wasn't as big a thing. But between the Burnley.co.uk Place brand and then in 2019, because you guys worked on it, we launched the Burnley Social Place brand to target the younger demographic, which is what we go out to schools, uni, college, etc. with. We have 9 social media channels because we need them. So Burnley Co UK has got its own, Burnley Social has its own, and we can reach millions of people through that. We barely do paid ads. A lot of it is just organic. And yeah, we can tailor different releases onto different platforms with different tones of voice. I just don't see how anyone these days could not use social media, because for us, we're a team of 3, which I know is very generous compared to what some other place brands have, but it's still not enough time. Like, we're still like, gosh, there's so much to do. Social is such a not easy way, because obviously managing social media is actually quite difficult despite what people think, but it's very time consuming, but we can get those messages out quite easily in the grand scheme of things when we need to be, very quickly, for free. And I just think it's absolutely essential.
Viva was tasked with helping develop a brand aimed at the younger audience for Burnley 4 or 5 years ago. Burnley Social was born, and we did quite a bit of work over a year on that. Ended up winning an award, and that's still going strong, I guess.
It is. So it's still 2019, as you said. It started, so it's still a lot younger than the Co-UK brand, but it's definitely going from strength to strength. We engage a lot now with schools. which I think was a bit of a missing link. We got feedback from schools that perhaps they didn't feel included in bondholders, and they are an essential part because they're our future generation right there who need to be aware of all the amazing careers they could have in Burnley, for example. So we signed up as many schools as possible as bondholders. Schools don't pay. And we have amazing links. And actually something that's come out of this collaboration, we have monthly calls now with the career leads at secondary schools, is Find Your Future. It's the first dedicated Burnley careers fair in 10 years. It's not quite a careers fair because it's year 11s, so they're not going to find a job there.
Yeah.
But we've got a whole mix of education providers, apprenticeship providers and businesses. And hopefully it'll open up the year 11's eyes to see just what kind of career. We don't want people to still think that, great, they want to go to other places, obviously, like you are allowed to do that. But we want to say, look, you don't necessarily have to go to your Manchesters and your Leeds to have a really cool career. So that's been really important. And then also the Future Leaders programme is, we believe, one of the first of its kind in the country. We've not come across anything yet where the private sector, i.e. the bondholders, are paying for the participants to go on there in the pot, but it costs about £15,000, but that's badged under the whole Burnley social young people. That gets people talking as well, the future leaders, because in effect you could be paying for a competitor's. Obviously, when you submit your person onto this, you're not physically handing over the money at that point, but it's the bondholder pot that's paying for it. It works out about £1,000 per participant. So it's great. It's a 12-month programme. And again, because we're able to pool our resources to deliver that, I just think it's amazing. And I am talking about this programme at another Place Brand National Conference in November about, because again, that's just blowing people's minds that it exists.
It's fabulous. How do you ever go about in all of this activity? And I know you churn out so much content between the three of you. How do you measure any kind of impact and success?
This also gets people talking at conferences. They ask for figures. A lot of it is a feeling, which I know sounds really wishy-washy, but we can see on socials, the comments, how positive they can be when we post certain stories. Obviously the magazine's flying out, the bondholder numbers increasing, you can followers increasing, you can say they're all measurable. We did do quite some time ago a massive research piece. It's something I do want to recreate, but as you know, these things take a lot of time and money. It's something on the agenda to go back out and say, is the brand working? Like, what do people actually think of it? So that is in our radar. But no, and again, it's probably not the answer you want, but I don't go around measuring how certain campaigns are. You can just sometimes tell from the buzz in the room or the reaction that you get on social media. Social media is a great tool for measuring that.
What do you think would happen if you did, your pre-interview experiment of WhatsApping a group of people to find out what they thought of Burnley now? Would you be disappointed if things hadn't changed in the reactions and comments that you got back?
I'd definitely be disappointed, but they probably would be more polite now, wouldn't they? Because they know my job. But maybe we should. Just
to kind of wrap things up, what do you think the golden lesson that you've learned about place brand management in the 4.5 years you've been doing it? So I would say for this is coming from quite a corporate world where there was a very rigid rule book and you can only say this on social and everything goes through a sign-off process, and then you put something out and then they wonder why there was very minimal engagement because it wasn't that fun anymore by the time it made it out, is you've got to be really humble with a place brand and you've got to be fluid. Of course, we have kind of a storybook to guide us on the why we're doing what we're doing. Tone of voice, obviously, don't do anything crazy. But I think it's the humble, is to really listen to what people are saying so often, especially with bigger brands. You're putting stuff out, presuming that people are going to like it because you're such a big brand, how could it possibly fail? Whereas with a place brand, you've got to get out of your bubble. We're out there daily in Burnley, getting feedback from businesses, members of the public, and we can pivot. Because there's three of us and we're not tied by corporate rules and hoops to jump through, we can pivot. So we did see a need where our bondholders who were at the younger end of the scale, starting out in the career, felt quite intimidated coming into big bondholder events. There can be 120 quite experienced people there. So that's why we set up our own under 30s line of events, which again is under the Burnley Social brand, to create a safer space.
Yeah, so I would say being humble, pivoting, listening to what people want, getting out of that bubble that you can be in, and taking all that back on board.
It sounds like authenticity is really key to that then. It'd be great to have London budgets and thrown at this, but it's got to reflect the reality, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if I mean, obviously everyone wants more money, but I don't think, I shouldn't really say this, should I? That we need it in that we are very adaptable with what we're given.
Yeah.
So we have increased the ad revenue for the magazines, which means we can create more magazines, which obviously creates more work for us, but the demand was there for it. It means that we can go out to bondholders and say to them, do you have an innovative space we can use for an event? And obviously bondholders typically don't charge us to use their event space because they want all the bondholders to come in and see it for themselves. You've got to be clever. It keeps you creative. It keeps you on the toes. It stops you getting complacent. You can't just throw money at something and make it all good. Again, it keeps you humble.
Brilliant. Well, that's a fantastic place to wrap things up. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's been great to reconnect after all this time, and thanks again for your time. And we will be watching the Burnley star rising ever more.
Thank you.
Thank you.